Investors across the world are watching Italy this morning. European markets are down amid political uncertainty in Italy after the country's president blocked the formation of a Euro-skeptic government. That has people wondering if, in fact, we're going to see Italy try to bust out of the euro. We're seeing the ripple effect in the United States as well. Futures pointing to a sell-off at the open as the euro trades lower against the dollar. Joining us now, the publisher and editor of the Gartman letter, Dennis Gartman. Dennis, it's good to see you this morning. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Maria. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Your thoughts on what's going on in markets this morning? Obviously a sell-off, but it originates in Italy.
Well, it has originated in Italy. Actually, for a while yesterday, it was surprising to me that you had futures trading a little bit better on anticipation that the government in Europe, in Italy, would be denied, and that instead of having a Euro-skeptic, they would put somebody in there who was more Euro-enthusiastic. But Mr. Di Maio and Mr. Salvini, the head of the Liga and the head of the Five-Star Movement, want to have Mr. Savona as their treasury, as their finance minister. Mr. Mattarella, the president of Italy, has denied that fact. There's even now talk that Di Maio and Salvini are going to push for an impeachment proceeding. So things have gotten very ugly, very nasty. And the euro, as you see, is trading 115.50. We traded almost down to 115, the figure, earlier this morning.
Yeah.
That has caused problems. And also, people are not paying attention to what happened in Brazil, but the Brazilian stock market was down almost 5% yesterday, and the Brazilian real fell almost 1.5%. So you have problems not just in Europe, but in the emerging markets.
So what do these levels tell you? I know you're a technician, really, and you're looking at these levels in terms of the euro versus the dollar. Does that give you any intelligence in terms of what's to come?
Well, really, the thing to take to watch more closely than just the euro itself is watch what's happening to the euro versus the Swiss franc. That has been under very real pressure, and it tells me where informed, sophisticated money is leaving the continent and trying to find someplace else to go. And its first move is to go to Bern, to Geneva, to Lugano, to leave Berlin, to leave Brussels. That's the most important spread of all, the most important technical currency that's developing. I think it tells you that weakness is endemic here, and you have to be very careful.
Yeah, I think, Dennis, you're hitting a great point when you talk about the flight to quality, and you're starting to see it happen in the 10-year treasuries here. But what I'm trying to figure out is if you're a U.S.-based investor, you start to see small caps hit all-time highs here in the Russell 2000. You're starting to see the 10-year treasury come down. Is this a good time to put new money to work in the markets, given the strength of the U.S. economy? We saw earnings did exceptionally well this season with over 97% of the companies reported. Where do we go from here? Is this a good time to start putting capital to work? Because Italy's not really concerned. They've had political strife for hundreds of years. I mean, for the last 3 years, they haven't been able to find a leader. Greece got through it. If Greece didn't leave the European Union, Italy's not going to leave it.
Well, first of all, I doubt that Italy does leave the European Union. There's always a reason for concern. There's always a reason for confusion. But when push comes to shove, there's so much mental capital that has been expended to keep the European Union together that there will be talk about an Italian exit from the Eurozone. But that's not going to happen. You're going to have the impeachment proceeding. That makes people uncomfortable. But is a breaking apart coming at you? No, probably not. If you have to be a buyer, it's obviously nice to see that stocks are down this morning if you wish to be. I think, however, given the political concerns around the world and given the fact that your point that earnings were 97% above expectation and have been surprisingly strong, how much stronger can they get? That's my real concern at this point. So I will simply say I urge caution. I'll take what Warren Christopher, our former Secretary of State, used to say when it was incumbent on the problems in Europe. I'll urge caution. I usually do urge caution. Perhaps it's just my age.
Hey, Dennis, it's Lindsay Bell here. I just want to turn to the energy sector. It had a horrible week last week. The energy sector, the S&P 500, down 5%. We see oil prices coming down significantly on this news that Russia and Saudi Arabia might put oil back into the market. What are your thoughts here on the levels of oil right now? Where do you see us going over the course of the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, what was interesting was, but as the market was going higher, the term structure was starting to tell you something was untenable in the oil market. Normally, in a rising bull market in crude oil, the term structure, the backwardation as it was, should expand, and instead it was contracting, which again was telling me that sophisticated money was leaving that market. I don't think there's any question who's behind what's happening in crude oil here. I think it's Mr. Sechin, who is the head of Rosneft, who was very unhappy about the fact that he was not allowed to produce as much crude oil as he'd like to. He pressured Mr. Novak, the energy minister of Russia, to form some kind of agreement with the Saudis. And all of them are angry and upset about and concerned about the rising level of production here in the United States with what we've done in the Permian Basin. So should we be surprised by the fact that crude oil has fallen $5 a barrel? No. Is it going to bounce from these levels? Likely, but I suspect that last week's or the highs that were made a month and a half ago are probably the highs for several years. I don't want to say several years, but probably for some while into the future. There's just a lot of production coming at us. The Russians have much more to produce. The Saudis have much more to produce. And eventually, Venezuela will return to the market. And when that happens, you have some problems. So am I bullish on crude oil? No, I am not.